Over the past few weeks, barbarous bandits have been robbing merchants and traveling caravans along the highway road. To protect the city's supply routes, the local Adventurers Guild requested the subjugation of the barbarous bandits. After some discussion, 4 adventurers accepted this mission and finally arrived at their destination after a dull journey. Lizzie, an armored white-haired elf, kneeled on the dirt road to check the surrounding area for footprints while adjusting the longbow on his back. Ink, can you check the map that the guild gave us? The runefolk Ink adjusted their glasses while attempting to keep their long, tangled brown hair under control. I think we're in the general location, Lizzie. All I see is grass and trees, though. They looked up from the map with some hesitation. Have you found anything yet? Asked Christine, a green-haired runefolk. She shifted her rifle nervously over her shoulder. Her eyes darted back and forth as she stepped in close. She asked in a quiet voice, "We're not going to get attacked by them, are we?" "Let them come," said the 4th adventurer tersely. His dark voice caught Christine by surprise. A cloud of smoke from the cigarette in his mouth rose into the air as he brushed some of his silver bangs out of his eyes. "I'd kill them all on the spot." Ignoring this banter to focus on his tasks, Lizzie said, "Wait, I see something over there in the grass." And he stood up to walk off-road. "I think it's some sort of trap door. It's not well done. They just threw some grass and dirt over a canvas. What sort of scouts came by and not see this?" Ink and Lizzie held back a few meters away from the trap door. "I don't see any footprints near it," mused Ink. "Do you think it's a trap? Silver, can you take points?" "Idiots," murmured Silver as he boldly stepped forward while unsheathing his saber. With a swing of his blade, the canvas was cut and the camouflage that was placed over it collapsed, revealing a small tunnel that gently sloped downwards. "Nothing to be scared of," he said while making his way into the tunnel. "Follow me." Ink, Lizzie, and Christine followed after Silver into the small tunnel, only wide enough for them to move in a single file. The dirt tunnel looked minimally braced with some wooden beams, much like a mine shaft would. However, as the light from the surface began to fade, Silver's pace slowed down as his brows began to furrow. "What, can't see in the dark like the rest of us?" asked Ink. "Don't worry, why don't you get a torch out?" And Ink squeezed himself past Silver and patted him on the shoulder with a smirk. Silver pressed himself against the side of the wall to let Ink pass forward with a frown, making sure that he would remember that snide comment. "Something still seems really off about this. I didn't see any footprints above, and I'm certainly not seeing anything down here," murmured Ink. "What if this is an ambush?" asked Christine nervously, pressing herself closer against Lizzie. "What if there's another path we missed behind us?" Ink laughed and said, "Sure, yeah, we totally missed a path on this one-way tunnel." But what if the walls are fake?" exclaimed Christine as she pushed herself even closer to Lizzie, causing the elf to stumble forward into Silver. Growling, Silver straightened himself out and pushed the two back off him. Lizzie sighed and tapped one of the dirt walls. "Well, this is most certainly not fake." Bottling their concern, Ink continued to lead the party deeper into the tunnel before coming up against a wooden door. "Hold on," they whispered. "There's a door here. Should we push through?" "What if they're waiting behind the door for us? They could have arrows ready to shoot," whispered Christine as she held her rifle close. "Let me see if I hear anything." Lizzie squeezed his way past Silver and Ink to press his ear against the door. After a few seconds of held breath, Lizzie shook his head. "I don't hear anything. It's dead silence." He then placed his ear against the door again. Or rather, it's like everything is just muffled, including our voices in here. We might as well move and see what comes our way. Remember, said Ink, if you kick it hard enough, it'll hurt whoever's standing on the other side. Lizzie chuckled. Well, let's give it a go. And forced the door open, only to smash the door wide open into a dirt wall. Guys? The cave around the four adventurers then began to shake as the wooden beams began to collapse inwards due to the loss of support that the door had once provided. I knew it! It's a trap! Cave in! Run! Shouted Ink as they began to scramble backwards, pushing Silver and Christine onwards. Tears began to fall from Christine's eyes as she ran. I don't want to die like this! We'll be fine, just move those feet or none of us are getting out! Shouted Ink. Silver raised his cape above his head to prevent dirt and splinters from flying into his face. Shut up and move! Everyone okay? Lizzie sat down on the ground with a sigh. 1, 2, 3. Wait, where's Christine? A muffled sound came up from the collapsed tunnel. Help me! How did you end up buried when you were at the front, Christine? Asked Ink. Slightly battered, the entire party began to slowly uncover Christine. Upon getting a breath of fresh air, she exclaimed, I told you the walls were fake! I told you! Lizzie laughed and said, They weren't fake. I'd say they were quite real. Christine immediately snapped back to say, Well then, they were too real! Later, we're under attack, said Silver as he unsheathed his saber. He stood up in front of Christine, who was still buried waist deep. That trap alerted them. Nearby, another trapdoor was pushed aside as the snarls of a few hooded barbarists pulled themselves out of the ground. Dagger and arrow hoodlings, remarked Silver. Weak. Some magic will easily take them out. Silver held the pommel of his saber towards his palm and began chanting words of true speech. Lizzie knocked an arrow against his bow and stepped forward beside Silver. Well then, we finally get a bit of exercise. Allow me to take the first shots. With a well-practiced movement, Lizzie released an arrow that drove itself into the first dagger hoodling's shoulder, causing it to snarl. It then used its rusty dagger to snap the arrow off at its base. Wait guys, what about me? Don't leave me buried here! Cried Christine as she frantically used a small shovel to dig herself out. I think you're already in a position to shoot that gun of yours, Christine. Just stay back and give us some supporting fire, said Ink as they unsheathed both of their broadswords and ran forward, joining Silver and Lizzie in the skirmish. Parrying the dagger hoodling's attack with one of their swords, Ink quickly spun, leaving a wound across the hoodling's chest. Upon seeing the arrow hoodling aim its bow at them, Ink shouted, Silver, you finished with that spell yet? Don't hurry me. It's dead now, was Silver's reply as he completed his spell. A silver ball of energy, sparkling green and black, arced through the air, smashing into the arrow hoodling before it could fire its arrow. The ball of magic racked its body before it fell to the ground, lifeless. Pulling herself out of the ground, Christine aimed her rifle's muzzle against her injured leg. She whispered a few words of healing in magic tech. She then pulled the trigger, causing a magic burst of light to heal her as the bullet shell was ejected with a green spark. Much better, she whispered. She stood up unsteadily, but was prepared to join the rest of the fight. Both of the dagger hoodlings swung their rusty daggers at Silver and Ink. One of them attempted to leap onto Ink's back while the other tried to swipe at Silver's legs. However, Silver managed to block with his saber, whereas Ink easily danced out of the way. Can you stop moving so much? Asked Christine as she kept her iron rifle trained on one of the dagger hoodlings. What I would give for someone who could cast spells that hit both of them right now. Think you can manage that yet, Silver? Asked Lizzie while moving into another position nearby to fire his bow. Under consideration, stated Silver. He parried and dodged his opponent's attacks, leaping over them and swinging his saber at them. Thanks for the opening, shouted Christine as she pulled her trigger, landing a bullet clean through the dagger hoodling that Silver had distracted. Letting out a breath she didn't know she was holding, Christine said. Phew, I thought that was going to miss. On the other side of the skirmish, Ink was busy defending themselves from the last dagger hoodling. Ink then used their two broadswords to capture the dagger hoodling's weapon and knock it out of its hand. Lizzie, you got this? Now that the hoodling had left him an opening, Lizzie stepped forward and released an arrow from his bow. I got it, he said as the arrow pierced through the last dagger hoodling's head. There was a collective sigh of relief as the adventurers checked their surroundings to make sure there would be no more attacks. Silver was quick to pick up one of the hoodling's crude daggers. Christine collapsed to the ground, holding her rifle to herself and wailed, I almost got crushed by that tunnel. You're still in one piece though. Lizzie began to rummage through the arrow hoodling's pockets and frowned. Nothing but its dirty hood and this crude bow. I suppose the guild would at least take this much. Ink was at the trapdoor that the hoodlings had climbed out of, checking it for any more traps. You're definitely looking better than the rest of us, they said while tapping the walls of the tunnel with their sword. Seeing that she was sitting next to one of the dagger hoodlings, Christine also began to rummage through its pockets. That's only because I healed myself. You all didn't see, but I was pretty banged up because of that cave-in, she said while pocketing the rusty dagger she found. By the way, does anyone else need to be healed? However, after checking her ammunition, she shook her head and said, Actually, never mind. I could only afford to buy a few bullets for this mission. The four adventurers reconvened next to Ink. How about we have 2 people check inside first, and 2 of us stay up here, just in case, suggested Lizzie. Christine quickly raised her hand. I like that. I volunteered to be lookouts. Just tell me when it's safe to come down, and open the door first. After making sure there was no more danger, Ink and Lizzie started delving into the tunnel first, with Christine and Silver joining them after a few seconds. The 4 of them moved quietly for about a minute, guiding Silver into the darkness, before Ink held a hand to stop them all. The party looked at Ink for an explanation. See those footprints there? Ink pointed at the ground. They suddenly stopped right in the middle of the tunnel before continuing a meter out. There must be something there. Ink traced their hand along the tunnel's walls before they exclaimed, There! On the wall! Handholds! There must be another trap there. Christine leaned forward with her rifle and poked at the ground, revealing a tarp. Pulling it back, she looked down to see a pitfall with the silhouette of a few rusty spears and sharp metal adorning the bottom. There would have been a painful fall had anyone been foolish enough to fall into it. She turned to her Ink and said, Good catch. Those pots and pans at the bottom are probably to make some noise if anyone fell in too. Using the handholds, the party held themselves close to the wall to make their way across the pitfall and continued down the tunnel for another few minutes. Does anyone else smell something terrible? Asked Lizzie. Silver's nose twisted at the scent of decaying bodies that wafted up from the end of the tunnel. He pulled his cape around to block some of the smell. Dead bodies. In the darkness ahead, Christine, Ink, and Lizzie's eyes were adjusted to see within the darkness due to their runefolk and elven heritage. Large cobwebs lined the floor and walls of the huge cavern. Wrapped up in the spider webs were dead remains of various humanoids and animals that were unfortunate enough to have been caught as prey by whatever predator lived here. Sweating nervously, Christine began to back up. I left something in the other room. You all wouldn't mind if I went back to grab it, right? But before she could walk too far, Silver's hand reached out to grab her by the scruff of her neck, thwarting her attempts to run. Someone light a torch, said Silver. As the only member of the party who did not have dark vision, he was beginning to tire of not being able to see anything. Ink reached into their backpack and said, Well, if you're sure about it. As the fire began to light up the room, on the other side, 8 beady eyes reflected the light of the torch back at the party. Before any of them could do anything, the large creature on the opposite end of the room began to move, darting up the wall into the darkness above. That's a spider, said Ink. Yep, it's a huge spider, replied Lizzie. Christine began to tremble. Let's just set the room on fire, yeah? We can come back after and then we won't have to deal with the problem. No, wait. If we burn everything and come back later, who knows where the spider will come from, proposed Lizzie as he thought about the situation. Besides, we'll need to light the room somehow for Silver to help out. Let's take it out while we burn the webbing. Okay then. Christine began to walk down the tunnel back the way they came from. Who's the fastest runner? How about I set up back here and I'll just shoot straight down the tunnel when the spider comes for you? That would probably be me, said Lizzie. It would be bad if whoever was bait tripped while running. Ink leaned out into the cavern with a torch, checking to see if they could figure out where the giant spider was. Would it actually follow us? It must be waiting on the ceiling right now. Christine nodded. I'm sure it would. Besides, this is a good choke point for me. Anything that counts for us wouldn't be able to do much as long as we all prepare some long-range attacks. Let's just do this, cowards, said Silver as he stepped forward and grabbed the torch from Ink. Christine hurried to brace herself and aimed her rifle down the tunnel. Wait, let this coward get into position. Don't worry, Silver. I've got your back. Lizzie drew his bow and knocked an arrow as he stood by Silver's side. With a deft moment, Silver threw the burning torch a few meters ahead, allowing it to catch onto one of the large webs that covered the ground. The torch landed in the silk threads, causing the web to bounce from the impact a few times before the fire began to spread. From one web to another, the flames leapt across the cavern, onto the floor, and quickly ate their way up the cavern walls. The cavern began to brighten up, revealing the vastness of the cavern, and near the top, saliva dripping from its mouth, waited the giant spider. With its position revealed, the spider let out a scream echoing in the cavern as it prepared to leap down. It's going to jump! Silver, Lizzie! Take 2 steps back because it's landing to your left, shouted Ink, reading the spider's movements. Just as Ink had warned, the spider leapt down, landing on the ground beside the 2 adventurers. However, being ready for the situation, both of them were quick to prepare for it as they moved into position while Silver began to chant in true speech again. It's weak to fire. Just burn the thing, but watch out for its bite, shouted Christine as she aimed her rifle. Targeting. Christine's magisphere floated over to transform into a targeting reticle by her eyes. Placing a finger over the trigger, she whispered for a good opening to reveal itself while holding her breath. The giant spider was clearly having trouble finding a good spot to stand with all of its webs on fire. Seeing her chance, Christine pulled the trigger as a bullet shell was released with a yellow spark of magic. However, the giant spider demonstrated its quick reactions as it suddenly dropped its entire body flat to the ground, causing the bullet to fly right over its head. What? No way, this guy's good! Exclaimed Christine in surprise. 2 broadswords at the ready, Ink directed energy to their legs as they leapt into the air in a spinning whirlwind. It's wide open for me though! They shouted and spun across the spider's large abdomen. Almost getting stuck against the spider's web sac, Ink kept pushing through with as much power as they could, landing on the ground with a slight stumble. How's that? They looked expectantly. It looks really badly hurt now. Just as Ink said that, from the broken web sac, a swarm of baby giant spiderlings began to crawl out onto the cavern floor beside the giant spider. Oh god, this is my worst nightmare come true, whispered Christine as she tried to find another opening. Take this, shouted Silver fiercely as he sent another ball of sparkling energy at the giant spider. However, it crashed against the spider's carapace without leaving much of an effect. Silver was forced to quickly roll to the side as the spider swung one of its legs in his direction. Lizzie was corralling all of the giant spiderlings at a short distance from himself. No problem here. They aren't that smart. They're just following me. He aimed his arrow at the spiderlings that he had managed to line up in a row in front of him. Releasing his arrow, The projectile pierced through all the remaining spiderlings at once, causing them to fall dead on the spot and be enveloped by the fire. Ink was still recovering from their spinning attack. "Good work, Lizzie." However, they had not landed as well as they hoped, and were having trouble recovering their footing. As a last-ditch effort, Ink attempted to throw themselves back into the tunnel and out of reach of the giant spider, but was too late. Moving faster than its body might suggest, the giant spider reached forward with its large maw, catching Ink and crunching down on their stomach. Feeling their ribs begin to collapse, Ink jammed their swords between the giant spider's maw, using them as leverage to try and free themselves from it. "Someone, help!" Lizzie was busy handling the giant spiderlings, which continued to crawl out of the web sack. He only had a moment to say, "A bit busy, there's more of them," before continuing to avoid the spiderlings. With each of the spiderlings as large as a small dog, it was a frightening sight to witness as Silver and Lizzie continued to swing their weapons to drive the spiderlings away. With a number of spiderlings clambering up onto his legs, Lizzie desperately attempted to swipe them off himself. However, they began to drizzle digestive acid onto Lizzie, which ate into his skin, causing him to shout in pain. "These are terrible." Christine moved her rifle back and forth between Ink, Lizzie, and the giant spider. "Healing? Attack? Can anyone else help them recover?" asked Christine in confusion. However, in this party she soon realized that she was the only person who could heal someone on the spot. "Stop hesitating and shoot," commanded Silver as he slashed his saber at the giant spider's head. Though the blade did not manage to break through the giant spider's carapace, the impact was enough to force it to release Ink from its jaws. Ink coughed up some blood as he landed on the ground. The mechanical intricacies of the rune-forged neck whirled and sputtered for a moment. "Damn it, I'm not taking this." Ink stood back up using one of their swords to remain steady on their feet. "Silver, give me an opening." "Don't tell me what to do," said Silver. Despite the words, he still dashed forward through the flaming webs, slashing at the giant spider's head. The giant spider attempted to evade back, but suddenly recoiled away from the burning webs behind it. "Watch this, everyone!" shouted Ink as they dashed forward. Using Silver as their distraction, they dodged the giant spider's attack and slid underneath its body while spinning. Ink's two swords swung out, cleaving through the spider's 8 legs with as much power as possible, and lacerating the bottom of the giant spider's abdomen before they slid back out from the opposite side. "Ta-da!" said Ink as they attempted to strike a pose. The giant spider's dead body collapsed onto the burning cavern floor with a heavy thud. There was a short cheer as everyone celebrated the small victory. "Watch out, Ink!" warned Christine. Ink's moment of triumph was short-lived, as they had failed to notice that the swarm of giant spiderlings had managed to surround them. Attempting to dodge their attacks, Ink winced as the exertion of their earlier attack was now impeding their ability to dodge. "Please stop moving. I need to shoot you so that I can heal you," shouted Christine. Trying to get their body to move, Ink shouted, "Well, now's your chance!" Christine then fired another bullet from her rifle. The ejected bullet casing sparked with a flash of green magic. The healing bullet flew through the air, but just before it hit Ink, it suddenly burst and dispersed into the air. "I'm waiting, Christine!" shouted Ink as a spiderling leapt onto their back. Seeing no effect from her bullet reach Ink, Christine began to frantically check her gun for any issues. "Damn it, I think that bullet might have been defective. Christine, please hurry up!" Ink pushed the spiderling off their back, managing to use their swords to push its mouth away from their own neck. Lizzie continued to seek opportunities to land his own arrow without becoming swarmed himself. "We're on our way, Ink." Silver cut and jumped his way through the swarm of giant spiderlings with a fury to make sure he wasn't being left behind in the amount of monsters he had killed. However, before he could attack the spiderling on Ink's back, it jumped away to safety. With only a few more spiderlings left, Lizzie aimed another arrow at one of the arachnids, pinning it against the cavern wall. Without the giant spider in the way, cleaning up the smaller spiderlings was not as difficult. Panting with exertion, Ink singled out the last surviving spiderling. "Try to bite me?" they asked, leveling their weapons at it. "Get out of here!" With a powerful strike, Ink sliced through the last spiderling with a heavy force. They then took a moment to dislodge their swords from the cavern floor. "A giant spider? Easy, no sweat. A ton of these smaller ones? Hell no." With a sigh of relief, Christine began to reload her rifle. She was starting to run low on bullets, so being able to save their ammunition was a relief. Walking forward, Christine and Lizzie both began to check the spiderling bodies to see what could be salvaged. "We can definitely sell a bunch of the carapace for some money," cheered Christine as she checked her inventory. "I'm running low on ammo though. I think I could shoot an arrow through my rifle instead?" Christine glanced at Lizzie's quiver. Lizzie hid his quiver, as if trying to keep Christine's hands away. He then said with a sharp look, "Don't even try it." Christine sighed again and said, "I wish I had more money before we came out here." "Hey, check this out! How much do you think the guild would buy all this sticky silk for?" laughed Ink as they showed off a large ball of spider silk in their hands. "I bet they would pay good for this." "I'd rather have some ammo instead," complained Christine. Ink and Silver looked at the dead adventurers around them and the random supplies that had not been consumed by the giant spider. "There's something here," said Silver as he began to look through the damaged backpacks. "Worn swords, spears. The spider's acid corroded too much of it, but they can be used for spare metal." Without any signs of remorse in going through the deceased belongings, Silver also pocketed some money as well. He then turned to Ink and said, "Catch. Healing potion." "Thanks. This'll be useful," replied Ink as they caught the small vial. Looking through some small bags, they called Lizzie and Christine over. "Hey, we've got some ammunition here too." Lizzie nodded. "These arrows are still good," he said, while selecting a few arrows from the fallen quiver. Christine celebrated with her find as well. "These bullets don't look damaged either. Hopefully no duds again. I've got more bullets than I started with now though." "Shall we take a break while we have this opportunity?" suggested Lizzie. Ink immediately laid back on the cavern floor. "That sounds good to me," and began to retrieve some life grass from their bag. Seeing that Lizzie didn't have any life grass of his own, Ink also passed one over to him. "So, Silver," asked Christine, "you're named after metal, right? So what about you, Ink? A writing implement?" Ink shook their head. "No," they said while preparing their life grass. "Ink isn't for me. It's what I do to the blood of my enemies." Ink heated up their life grass with a small match before relaxing in its scent. "See what I mean?" A single finger pointing at a dead giant spider was all Ink needed to do in order to reinforce their statements. Lizzie coughed a bit from the burning life grass. "A bit strong, don't you think?" "Oops, must've been too much smoke. Looks like it's already irritating your eyes too." Lizzie tended to his own injuries and said, "Here, let me do it myself." Chatting and making some conversation in the fading light of the burning webs, the four adventurers dressed their wounds while giving themselves a few minutes of physical and mental reprieve. "We should move now," said Silver as he began to stand up. "Those hoodlums will figure out their scouts haven't returned soon." It was good while it lasted," sighed Ink. "There was another passage across from where we came from, but when I checked it while you were all resting, it looked exactly like where we came from." Lizzie also pointed towards another particularly large tunnel that rose directly up to the surface. "That one there is probably how the giant spider moved in and out of this cavern too." After exchanging a glance, everyone nodded and simultaneously agreed that there was another path hidden somewhere here. With the spiders gone and the webs mostly burnt away, we should be able to look around more easily now. Lizzie began to check the cavern walls with Christine as she used her rifle to check any suspicious spots next to him. If there are any traps, they're probably all burnt away too, muttered Ink. After a few minutes of searching, Lizzie called the entire party. Over here, see this? It was probably originally concealed by the webs, but all that has been burnt away. This looks like our way forward. Pressing his hands against the wall, Lizzie slowly traced out the hidden door that had been built into the cavern. Ink agreed after tapping the area with their sword. It doesn't look trapped either. They probably thought the giant spider would be enough to keep any intruders out. Christine readied her rifle and asked, "So, who wants to take the honor of opening the door?" Lizzie shook his head. "Last time I opened something, the entire place came falling down." "Surely, Silver, brave man that he is, will take point again, right?" asked Ink with a grin. "How about making sure whoever is on the other side gets a door to the face?" Silver nodded and with a saber at the ready, took a step forward and with a thrust of his boot, kicked the door down. The door tumbled forward in a crash, revealing behind it a smaller cavern space being used as a living area. Situated around the sides of the room were a number of beds made of various rags, and in the center, there were 3 dagger hoodlings sparring with one another under the guidance of another hoodling with a small saber at their side. Lounging in the back of the room watching was another small furry barbarous the size of a human child with small fangs and bat-like wings. In the midst of their training, they had not noticed adventurers fighting in the larger room. The barbarous stood, staring in shock. The hoodling with the saber then began to shout something in barbarous. In response, the dagger hoodlings began to move in a panic to get into position, but the adventurers did not give them the opportunity to do so. "I suppose if we had opened the door quietly, we might have been able to just sneak by, huh?" asked Christine while preparing her rifle. Lizzie nodded and then pulled back a nocked arrow. "Well, we really should thank Ink and Silver for this situation then." Silver remained silent as he began to chant in true speech. The small barbarous in the back reacted to this and began to point at Silver while shouting in barbarous at the other hoodlings. That gremlin in the back, it can cast true speech magic just like Silver," warned Christine. Transferring magic into her gun, her magisphere transformed into a targeting reticle before her eye again. "Targeting?" The ejected bullet shell sparked with a yellow magical light as Christine fired another bullet aiming for the gremlin. However, the hoodling with the sword moved in the way, taking the bullet meant for the gremlin. "And that's a saber hoodling! Watch out for it because it'll try to distract you with a heavier attack so that its ally can land a blow. Your magic can make good work of it, Silver." Ink rushed forward, drawing both of their broadswords while saying, "I'm sure that healing potion will come in handy here." His spell complete, Silver projected another ball of crackling energy that he immediately hurled forward at the saber hoodling, smashing it into the ground. Its weapon dropped to the ground as it died. "Easy," he muttered. Seeing their leader fall, the dagger hoodlings began to panic in earnest despite the gremlin shouting at them. The dagger hoodlings then began to run forward without much of a plan. "Don't let them get to Christine," said Lizzie as he stepped forward in his armor. Drawing back an arrow, he released it into one of the dagger hoodlings, while the third one rushed past him. "Damn it, you're in the way! Move!" Ink attacked the hoodling that had run past Lizzie with as much power as they could, killing it on the spot. "Or there'll be nothing left of you but a splat!" Surprised as they were, the 2 remaining dagger hoodlings attempted to hold off the adventurers, but were unable to connect any of their strikes against Lizzie or Ink. "The gremlin's running away! But these hoodlings, they're in the way!" exclaimed Christine as the gremlin began to make for another door. We can get a clear shot if we take out these dagger hoodlings first, replied Lizzie while releasing another arrow. However, it wasn't enough to defeat the hoodling. Ink swung their two broadswords again at the second dagger hoodling, instantly taking it out with the weight of their blows. If only I could strike two of them at once. Silver, your energy bolt for that one. My saber will be enough, replied Silver as he swung his weapon. However, the dagger hoodling managed to evade the attack and cackled at Silver's arrogance until it realized it was the last opponent standing in the room. With an exasperated expression, Silver immediately brought his saber back close to defend himself from any attacks. Damn it! The gremlin's already gone into that other room! I'll take out this last dagger hoodling then, said Christine as she fired another bullet into the last dagger hoodling. From the other room, the party could hear the gremlin shouting. In response to its cry, the sound of buzzing began to echo out of the next room. Ink immediately dashed after the gremlin. You're not getting away, they shouted. But when they ran into the next room, Ink found themselves surrounded by 5 giant gadflies. Bugs! They screamed as the gadflies began to circle Ink. Christine, Silver, and Lizzie followed after Ink, but Christine suddenly pulled to a stop just before entering the room. Bugs? In that case, I'm not going in there! I think these ones look somewhat cute though, said Lizzie as they drew an arrow from their quiver. Giant gadflies, began Silver. They constantly attack in swarms to draw blood and don't give you a chance to recover. Our weapons will be enough. Stepping into the room, Lizzie immediately released an arrow before any of the giant gadflies could engage anybody. Is the gremlin still here? He asked while looking for signs of the fleeing Barbarous. I hate bugs! Shouted Christine from the entrance of the dim room. Aiming her rifle through her magisphere turned targeting reticle, a light of yellow magic burst from the ejected bullet casing as the magic flew through the air, piercing through 2 giant gadflies in 4 bright yellow flashes. What was that, shots? Exclaimed Lizzie. Spurred on by the impressive shot, everyone moved into position. Worried about leaving too much of an opening against these giant gadflies, Ink reservedly swung their 2 broadswords, cutting a 3rd gadfly to the ground. Silver swung his saber at the gadfly that Lizzie had attacked earlier, while keeping close to Ink. He frowned, seeing that his attack wasn't deep enough to take it down. Anyone else would have run away after seeing that shot, cried out Christine while lining up her next shots. Ink brought up their 2 swords to protect themselves from a gadfly. They're just flies. They're probably thinking, oh, more food for us. The remaining 2 giant gadflies then focused their attacks on Silver, attacking one after another. The second gadfly found an opening to smash Silver into the nearby wall. Grunting from the impact, Silver swung his saber as he fell to the floor, but the 2 gadflies simply flew out of his reach. Get these damn bugs off me! Without much room to maneuver, Lizzie stood outside of the skirmish. A trickle of sweat dripped down Lizzie's forehead as he attempted to aim at one of the gadflies. You're in the way, everyone! Just take the shot! We believe in you! Shouted Ink as they continued to defend themselves. Blood dripped down Silver's injured side as he threatened Lizzie. If you hit me, I'm gonna blast you. How are you going to do that if you're dead? Replied Lizzie with a shaky hand. Take the shot! Ink encouraged Lizzie without turning their attention away from the gadflies. Lizzie's eyes desperately tried to follow the giant gadflies' movements. However, the way they flew erratically and his allies' movements made it difficult for him to spot an opening. Damn it, this better be it, shouted Lizzie as he released his arrow at one of the gadflies. However, just as the arrow was released, the giant gadfly flew at Ink, forcing them to dodge to the side and right into the line of Lizzie's arrow. Ink's eyesight suddenly flashed yellow as pain erupted through their back. Lizzie, what was that? It was like Christine's healing bullets but worse. Why did you dodge that way? Lizzie was shocked that he had hit an ally instead. Ink dropped a sword and reached into their bag, Where else would I have dodged? They pulled out a healing potion and said, "Good thing we picked this up earlier." Taking a drink from the vial, Ink threw the emptied vessel to the side while preparing to find an opportunity to pick up their dropped weapon. "Do you think we have time to take another break later?" Christine nervously aimed another shot at one of the remaining gadflies, dropping it out of the air as it died. With one enemy remaining, the Avengers were able to quickly take it to the ground. Without the time to check for anything that could be sold, they continued to chase after the gremlin, who they found cowering within the next room. Obvious drag marks from heavy items that were brought into this room could be seen by Ink as they pointed a sword at the gremlin. The gremlin immediately dropped to its knees and began to beg for mercy in the common language.
Wait, please don't hurt me. I'll do whatever you want. You can have my treasure. Take all of it if you want. Just let me go.
The gremlin dropped to its knees and held their hands up in surrender. The party looked at each other in consideration before Christine aimed her rifle at the gremlin. "You don't have anyone held hostage down here, right?"
Nobody. We never took anyone hostage. Just the treasure.
Ink and Christine looked at each other and then asked, "Well then, where's the treasure?"
Back here.
The gremlin crawled over to a hidden door and pulled it open to reveal all the treasure that it had stolen. Piles of stolen goods were thrown haphazardly into the room. A few bags of spices, chests full of jewelry, coin pouches, necklaces, and all sorts of jewels sparkled in the light of Silver's torch. Giving all of the items a quick glance, Lizzie pulled out a list of stolen items that the guild had provided him. After some consideration, Lizzie nodded and said, "Looks like everything is here." The gremlin gave out a sigh of relief, thinking itself safe.
So this means I can go, right?
However, it froze as two sharp blades were placed on either sides of their neck. "Unfortunately not. You crossed the line earlier by sending bugs after me." And with a swipe of their two broadswords, the gremlin's head was separated from its body. Unfazed at the sight, Lizzie also continued to say, "Looks like there's some additional items here too." "I suppose that can be our job bonus," said Ink as they cleaned off their broadswords and sheathed them. Taking some time to rest and recover, the party of adventurers then began to pack up all the stolen items. They also separated what could be returned and what they could keep. Once they returned to the surface, they all let out a small cheer as they stretched their bodies and took in the fresh air after being underground for so long. They then made multiple trips from underground and back to the surface to retrieve all of the stolen items before making a slow trip back to the guild. Protecting all the goods was a difficult task, but the party of adventurers were able to safely deliver all of the stolen items back to the guild. After a hearty welcome and a congratulations on the job well done, the four of them accepted their payments and celebrated their first official job with the Adventurers Guild. With some well-deserved rest and relaxation, it would be another day before they found another job. Whether that would be with the same party or not will remain a story for another time.